Since we are not in an ideal world and we don't have any anywhere where surrogacy is covered by our national health insurance, and we are in the need to have a group of professionals help us, and the surrogate compensation in the United States is high and complex. And by the way, we're really talking here about the United States. When it comes to Canada, some of the things we mentioned were absolutely true as far as what you ask the agencies and the clinics. Certainly the clinics is almost identical, but some things are different. Health insurance, for instance, is different in Canada, but it is still not limited. It's still not a complete solution for you either, so you have to ask those questions. So a couple of years ago, thank you very much, Lisa. A couple of years ago, we, well, more actually, when we started the assistance program, we all of a sudden were in a position where we really needed to know how much does this really cost. Why? Because we have, you know, between a dozen to 20 couples every year that we help fully, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. That means that we need to know how much it's going to cost, because even if when we get services for free, the rest is not, and we needed to, all of a sudden we became, you know, wholesale, you know, whole buyers of a large group of surrogacy services every year. So we tried to look at a large number of surrogacy agency and IVF clinic and egg donation agencies cost sheets, and try to compare them and understand and try to figure out a way to put them all in a way that we can analyze and understand, you know, and predict better. The reason that it's not that easy is because it is a process that is handled by different providers, different professionals, but also they don't have an incentive to figure it all out ahead of time. If, you know, sometimes they're afraid that if you know the exact cost, you might not start. So we know on average that our members are telling us that they ended up spending $20,000 more than they thought they would. Because we have a survey of people before they become parents. We have a survey of people after they become parents. We ask them before how much they think they're going to spend. We ask them later how much they really spent without travel or personal expenses, and we know it's on average $20,000 more. Okay? So the agencies and the clinics, when you meet the first day, will not remember to tell you a lot of the details, because it's not in their interest to remember a lot of the details. Okay? Keep that in mind. They're not bad people. They're just, it's not something they spend a lot of time thinking and working on. So what we created is a budgeting system. We have those costs and we update them every year. We can't publish those costs for each clinic or agency because they give it to us for internal purposes, but we created averages of them. So I'm going to briefly talk about this in principle now, but if you ask to become part of our Facebook group, and the way to do it is just go to our Facebook group and ask to be part of it. And it'll take us a few days. We're still going to be traveling another day or two, but you know, we'll add you to the Facebook group in the files section, or is it called docs section?
I think it's docs. Is it? It's planned biological parent. Is that?
Yeah, it's if they go to the page connects to the group and vice versa. So you can look for Men Having Babies, you'll find it. Not MHB Europe, which is a separate page, but then you will find these files there. You also find a blank sheet. Just with, so this is how it's going to look. There's going to be some information, and there's going to be Excel sheets, okay? So here we are talking about little babies, but we need to talk about Excel sheets. So there'll be one Excel sheet for the agency and the surrogate compensation, and another one for, oops, and another one. And we will talk about the surrogate compensation part, which is very complex, and the insurance issues we're going to talk about in the afternoon, at the same time as we're also going to talk about medical issues. So we're going to maybe want to split up. One of you go here, one of you go there. That's the last sessions we have. So, and you can watch it later on video. Are we filming them? I'm not sure. But we have them online already. Okay, so in general, let me just explain how it is structured, which is similar to the way our cost sheets are structured. So agencies have cost for their fees for their program. They might line item some things, or they might have everything including in one fee. Sometimes agencies want to increase their cost. Instead of increasing their agency fee, they don't want to be known as the $40,000 agency fee, so they say, okay, it's still 20, but if you want coordination, it's another. If you want us to find a surrogate, it's another. So what is the agency fee for? So find out all those fees. So that's one component. Then legal fees for parenting, for the contracts versus legal fees for the parentage procedures, as we call finalization. That's another type of cost. Screening fees and medical expenses. So the agency screens surrogates, as you said, just by, in the office, but then they go to, once you matched with them and you like them, they do go to a clinic, and there's, medical tests. The egg donor has tests that she goes through, and you have to be tested. So that's part of the medical part. As you mentioned, there are insurance fees. I'm kind of going back between medical and agency, but insurance at the end of the day would not include a particular number. It may include if, then. It'll be something conditional. They'll say, we don't know who we're going to find you. We might find you somebody with really good insurance. If she has good insurance, it still depends how much is her deductible or copays. Those are fees that people pay if they use services that they're already insured for. So there might be deductible. Sometimes insurance contracts are such that the first $2,000 you pay, that's a deductible. Then we cover the rest. Or we pay everything, but after $2,000, we stop covering for another $2,000. That's the donut hole. And then we start covering again. It's not that straightforward. So there's going to be a lot if, then. They give you scenarios. So ask more and more about it, and we'll try to talk about it a little bit more this afternoon. Surrogate expenses and compensation beyond what the surrogate gets as a base compensation. They get a lot of other allowances, and they get a lot of expenses paid for them. So allowances are usually something they get in addition to the base compensation that is not conditional on providing any receipts, not conditional actually having an expense. So it could be allowance for travel, flat allowance for $500 to travel because she's not flying to the clinic, she's just driving. So they say, okay, $500 a month. Maternity clothing, what is it usually? $200 a month, something like that. So they will have all these allowances. They are guaranteed to be paid. Then there are expenses. If she goes to, she has to fly far for a clinic to be, to be screened. And maybe it is in the contract that her husband or partner can go with her, or companion. Those things are variables. Those are things that may or may not happen. She may have small children, and then you have to pay for childcare. She may work, you have to pay for lost wages for when she comes to appointments, but also if she has time she needs to take off because she's not allowed to work or move about, which is called bed rest later on in her pregnancy. A lot of those are big conditional things, okay? We always tell people, put aside about at least 10% of the overall cost for contingencies. And that is if you're not transferring to embryos. If you're transferring embryos, it might even be more, because you don't know whether those things are going to happen or not going to happen. But our table shows those things. And if you get the original file, it's in colors, and those possible costs are in blue. They may or may not happen. And of course, egg donation, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Actually, let me talk about that now. So, other than going through this list and learning, at least understanding the components, okay, and take have a good breakfast one day, and sit down with coffee and read this. It's not easy. It's not pleasant reading, but once you understand the structure. Go with this sheet, and as I said, we give you a blank sheet when you have a consultation with the providers. But in general, just to understand the big picture, we talk about how you have some choice over the costs, how some things are determined by your circumstances, things you can't change, and how some things are determined by chance. So you can choose, of course, the providers. That is what we're talking about here. And that could affect your cost a lot. You can choose, as George was talking before, whether to try to get the eggs that the egg donor provides shared with another couple. That could cut your costs. You can transfer 1 or 2 embryos. That affects your cost, not in a straightforward way, but certainly it changes some of the risks, but also it could affect the number of times you need to try until you have a pregnancy. The number of sperm source, not a big difference, but it could make some difference. If only one of you provides the sperm, there are some tests that are being saved, and perhaps you also can use fewer eggs. What about circumstances? Where you live would affect how much legal work you need to have done. Of course, some travel it would affect. And the legal work has to do with attaining full citizenship and parentage to your children. Your age would matter. I'm sorry, not so much your age, but more the age of the surrogate and the egg donor. But your age would have some effect too. HIV status certainly could change the costs. People that are HIV positive and asymptomatic, non-symptomatic, are able to have children through surrogacy and use their sperm. That's done a lot, but it is something that would require sperm washing and testing, something that would cost a few $1,000s more. But every clinic you meet with here will be able to give you the answer to that. And then let's talk about your choices regarding geographical locations. Well, of course, where you live, you can't change. Sometimes people do, but if you have an opportunity to go to the United States for a couple of years with your company, that could change things. But where the donor is, the geographical proximity of the donor to the clinic is one of the things that is easier to control and has the most effect on your costs. So if the donor is a donor that is provided by the clinic, or, which is harder to do, you can get a surrogacy or an egg donation agency find a donor that lives within driving distance from the clinic, then not only will she not have to, travel more expensively via air to the clinic back and forth, but she can do her entire medical preparation and monitoring, which takes how long? 2 or 3 weeks? 3 weeks, George? Yeah. She can do it at this clinic with no additional cost because it's already part of the package you're getting. Otherwise, if she doesn't live near the clinic, they will have to find what we call a satellite clinic, a different clinic, a third-party clinic where she lives, where she's going to go to for blood tests and ultrasound tests to see how she's reacting to the medications she got. And every one of these tests and sending them back to the clinic, et cetera, are hundreds of dollars. We're talking about thousands of dollars more. And there's more chance of something, of a shot, she needs to give herself a lot of shots, or, of something not being taken on time. There's more chance that, maybe something will go wrong. So, it doesn't matter where she lives compared to where you live. It doesn't matter where she lives compared to where the surrogate lives. But if she can live close to the clinic, that's the best way to save money without compromising anything. Sometimes people say there's not a big selection in the clinic's egg donor offer, but George already said, don't chase, ghosts by trying to get the best possible DNA. How close the surrogate lives to the clinic is also of importance. It's just harder to attain. It's going to be harder for you to limit the choice of surrogates to surrogates who live close to your clinic. If some agencies work very closely with clinics in their region and only recruit surrogates in that region, then that's perhaps something that could work. Sometimes it works anyhow, but it would save you less money than it would save you with an egg donor, but it could still be good if you are able to get a surrogate that lives close to the clinic. Your proximity to the surrogate, forget about it. She's not going to live near you. Your proximity but what I just want to mention is the concept of major airports. In the United States, some airports are, of course, more frequently used and they're major hubs. If a surrogate or even the clinic is not close to one of those major hubs, that means you're going to have to take, the flights could be double the price. Just keep that in mind. So if somebody lives in a small place in Idaho, the flights are going to be $2,000 to come here, or to, your flights to go there. It's just going to, oftentimes that's the case. Compensation levels. We highly, highly recommend that you ask your clinic, and if you do work with an agency, you ask the agency, what is the compensation level for the donor? Is it in line with what is the acceptable range? It used to be a formal range offered, suggested by the ASRM, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. It is now, less formally done so because they were sued. But it needs to be in the range of $8,000 for a first-time egg donor, not more than $10,000. Egg donation agencies that charge $30,000, for a Harvard graduate, with one red and one blue eye, no need for those things, okay? Those surrogates, those egg donors may not be available because they put their name on that list a year ago and they're already moved on. Extra compensation for experienced or proven fertility egg donor, that's not a bad idea. I personally don't like that kind of menu options, but if an egg donor gets another $1,000, which is typically, or even $2,000 more because she has already donated once and pregnancy was resulted in the first attempt, that's not a bad indication that she's a good donor, and I find that to be perhaps sometimes a good investment. However, paying $5,000 more, and that's what you're going to end up paying for an experienced surrogate, will not change your success rates. Is not something that you should do if you're cost-minded. An experienced surrogate, a surrogate that already went through one cycle, is guaranteed to be a very nice person. We already saw that. She's guaranteed to know the process better. She might help you, because she's more familiar with everything, something that maybe an agency needs to do and she will not need. In fact, people who try to do independent surrogacy, very difficult when you're in Europe. I would say the only way to do it is to have a really experienced surrogate, with you. But they typically get $5,000 more, sometimes even more than that, and that's not going to change your success rates.